right, it's the top of the hour, and I am excited to see folks jumping in here and see from Mississippi to Ohio and all other places around the country. So thanks for being a part of our Clarity First conversation this month. My name is Brian Rose. I'm your host, and I serve as a Chief Engagement Officer on the Oxano team, Senior Lead Navigator. Today's webinar is being presented by Jim Randall, our Chief Executive Officer, our Senior Lead Navigator, and co-founder of Oxano. We are talking today about 5 keys to leading staff meetings with vision clarity. And this is a part of a series this fall, August, September, October, really thinking about the impact clarity of vision has when it comes to our staff. So we talked about staff organization last month. We're going to talk about staffing, maybe even ahead of where you need to be. Kind of what are some funding solutions? So we're going to have our generosity expert Greg Gibbs on with us next month to talk about staffing ahead of funding. Staffing for vision ahead of funding. So it's going to be a great time to be a part of that. As you're joining us today, drop your name, city, state in the chat, just so we know who's here. We're also going to use that chat as an opportunity to facilitate questions. We had some questions come in ahead of time, but we're going to use that chat as a way to really engage with some of those things. So we're glad you're a part of it. I'm going to pray real quick and then reintroduce you to Jim Randall. So let's pray together. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for these leaders taking a little bit of time out of their day, out of their week, to lean into the importance of clarity. Lord, we know that clarity matters. You are a God who leads through clarity. Lord, we can define that in our own ways, but ultimately it is being clear of your heart for your people, for your world, for your gospel, for your purposes. And so, Lord, we pray that you would just give us that level of crystal clarity in our own lives and the lives of those we lead. So thank you for this time we get today. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. We've got Jim Randall today with us. Jim, thanks for jumping on once again and co-leading this with me and really kind of bringing the content with us today. I have a quote up here from you about meetings, and sometimes meetings can be miserable, but we believe, and you believe, I know you're very passionate about meetings being purposeful. Talk to us about this quote and give us a little bit of background on why this is so important to you.
Yeah, Brian, how long have we known each other? It's 30 years plus, right?
Yeah, getting close to 30 years.
Pretty close, man. It's been a while, and if you could probably share with everybody that if they hang out with me long, they know one of the things that I'm passionate about is the intentionality around meetings. And Brian, I go back some of our most early years in ministry together, quite frankly, spending hours digging in and thinking about and praying about how to be focused, how to be intentional, how to be effective with meetings. I think some of that comes from a holy discontent from sitting through a lot of meetings that are extremely difficult. So from my mindset, you kind of led right into it. You nailed what I kind of an overarching thought for me when it comes to meetings is that I want to lead with purpose. I want to meet with vision, and I want to make every moment count. Right? I want to be intentional. I mean, that to me is the definition of effectiveness when it comes to meetings. That ability to lead with purpose, meet around vision and make every moment count. And so I believe, as you see here, meetings is a place where vision can come alive. And what I find is most churches go through, and teams and staff, they go through some kind of routine obligation when they come together for meetings that makes it painful for everyone.
Yeah.
And so, if we want to transform really our culture, if we want to take ideas and put it in action, if we want to inspire people, we want to help them reach their highest potential, we've got to invest some time. We got to lead with purpose, meet around vision, and make every moment count.
Yeah, Jim, the painfulness of meetings is mitigated by preparation before the meeting begins.
Absolutely.
I think too many times, and listen, I'm as guilty of this as anybody, of rolling into a meeting with just a general or a light understanding of what we need to cover. versus really leaning in. I think today's webinar, through the lens of vision clarity, really kind of enables that preparation, really kind of gives some framework, railroad tracks, if you will, for that preparation to make it easier. Because people like me, you overcomplicate it, and I'm gonna run from it. But that's why I'm excited about getting to kind of jump into this topic today. And really, just 5 keys to leading staff meetings with vision clarity. And I believe this is going to be instructive and useful. Let's just jump right in, Jim, with key number 1. Well, before we get to key number 1, let's when we say vision clarity, what do we mean? For Auxano, the components of a clarity first vision or vision clarity looks like this. We have a articulated mission. Simply put, we understand what God is calling us to. We're not trying to answer every question with mission. We're just saying, hey, listen, in our context, the Great Commission looks like this, and this points everyone in the same direction. We have a set of values, right? We know how we make decisions. We have convictions that are articulated in a way where every leader in the organization, not just the senior leadership team, not just the senior pastor, not just one special set of people, can make good, consistent, healthy decisions that lead us toward that mission, right? That the why behind the what of the mission. We have strategy, which is that pathway or process of how we accomplish the mission, right? The alignment of all of our vehicle, venues, everything we do points us toward mission accomplishment. And then the big one, Jim, you and I know, particular passion for me, the outcomes. How do we know we're actually successful with the Great Commission? Everybody uses the word discipleship, disciple making. Do we actually know what a disciple is and does? Have we articulated that in our context? And so those are the outcomes. And then there's the vision plan. Once we have those pieces in place, what is the plan that actually accelerates us forward, that helps us take large and small steps to accomplishing that? So for us, the context of leading staff meetings with Clarity First Vision comes back to these 5 things as kind of a baseline. Would you say with that, Jim?
Absolutely. You're going to see that right out of the gate when we jump into the keys, Brian, how critical that is.
Yeah, and as I look over the list of attendees, I know a lot of folks are familiar with Auxano, but so you probably, this is like, we've heard this before. Exactly. You're going to hear it again too. We'll never get over leading with Clarity First Vision in those things. So, and that's because we believe clarity changes everything. We believe clarity isn't everything, but it changes everything. It affects everything. And so it changes even how we lead staff meetings when we have those things in place. So, Jim, let's get into it. 5 keys leading staff. First key right here. Get into it.
Hey, Brian, as we go into it, clarity should change how we lead staff meetings, but sometimes our competency trap, sometimes some of the things are our default, they kind of throw us off. Now, go ahead, go into that first key. I really wanted today's content to be incredibly practical. We have pastor leaders on here. We have ministry leaders on here. We have denominational ministry consultants on here. For me, I wanted to kind of let you look through the lens that I run, that I look through in order to build out Clarity First meetings. And so this is just straight up right out of the Jim Randall playbook, and we'll kind of fly through it. The first one is the idea of getting everyone on the same page. At the end of the day, if you don't have vision clarity, if you don't have everyone experiencing this a shared vision together, a shared set of language and skills we'll talk about in a second, then you're going to have misalignment. You're going to have teams going in different directions. So the principle here on getting everyone on the same page is that shared visionary language fosters alignment and unity. How many times have I heard a leader say, I've got ministry silos, I got people working in different directions, I've got a ministry leader over here doing their own thing, they're pursuing their own vision, I've got 9 different mission statements within our organization all over the board. Well, we don't have everybody on the same page, right? And so the critical part for me is to make sure that not just one time, but on a consistent basis, we're getting everyone on the same page. So there's a couple bullets kind of take away from this, or kind of help us unpack this idea of getting everyone on the same page. It begins with clearly articulating our church's identity and direction. So Brian set it up. We are a Clarity First organization. If there is a distinctive about our consulting that we do with churches, it is that we are going to lean into, we're going to challenge, we're going to push for churches and organizations to have that clarity, the clarity of the identity and the direction that Brian just walked us through. Mission critical for us on that. If you don't have that clearly articulated identity and direction, then there's no wonder that when a meeting starts or you begin to convene everybody, they come in with their own ideas. They come in with their own thoughts, right? So clearly articulating that. Second one, recalibrating everyone around the church's strategy and vision plan. There's one thing to have a clearly articulated identity and direction on paper. There's another thing to make sure that we're starting every meeting and we are calibrating, or better way to say it is recalibrating usually, right? Recalibrating everybody around what's our strategy, what is it that we're trying to accomplish. Most meetings are strategic in their nature, right? And I'm not going to say that a meeting is only about one or two parts of identity and direction. It's about all of them. But I will say this, if you walk in and you try to lead a meeting and people don't understand what you're trying to accomplish as it relates to reaching people for Christ and making disciples and where you're headed for the next 3, 5, 7 years, then I can just guarantee you that you're going to have confusion and that's going to lead to frustration. And then the third one is to ensure that all team members understand how their individual roles contribute to that mission, strategy, vision, even the values and the outcomes. How does my role, how do I fit? And Brian, I know for decades, you've done a phenomenal job at helping ministries think through ministry alignment. And I'm going to say, once again, if you're leading a team, and yeah, you have clear identity and clear direction, that's great. Maybe you're kind of making sure everybody knows, but they don't know how they fit, you're going to start to see that level of frustration amongst that leader begin to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then what's going to happen is you're going to find yourself in opposition. You're going to find them starting to have opposition with where you're headed, how the meeting's being run, what's their participation in that.
Jim, I see these 3 bullets stacking up like a pyramid where the baseline is, hey, here's who we are and where we're headed, right? Oh yeah, by the way, this is what we're focused on. And then the top, and here, remember, this is how all of our roles fit into that. Now, here's the question about that second bullet that pops up in my mind. Yeah. When you say recalibrate strategy, visionary plan, are you literally are we all going to stand up and recite the strategy, or, what does that recalibration look like real time? Because I know sometimes we have this idea, we all are clear about our mission. We can all stand up and recite it together. And it's much deeper than that. So what does kind of put handles on, if you're recalibrating the strategy and visionary plan at the start of a meeting, what does that look like? What are you physically doing? What are you, what's a piece of that?
Now, to be fair, if somebody stood up and recited it, I would be in total celebration of that, right? I would be like, go, right? I'd be win. But yeah, that's not necessarily the idea of the recalibrating. It's reminding the church. We get so caught up, especially in the world of strategy, of how we're reaching people for Christ and making disciples. We get so caught up in activity, and most staff meetings become a meeting around the calendar of events for that week. And there's no difference in value, and there's no difference in importance in Tuesday night bowling than it is to be engaged in a small group and growing as a disciple. There's no difference. And so what we've got to do is we've got to recalibrate our team on a consistent basis around saying, hey, at the end of the day, our how we're accomplishing this mission is going to, we've got to make sure that when we come together in our staff meeting, we got to make sure that we're actually effectively pursuing and achieving how we're our strategy and how we're accomplishing our mission. And when we have identified strategies over the next 3 years, or we've identified some initiatives that are actionable that need to be happening in the next quarter, how do we make sure that those actual strategies and initiatives themselves that are part of our vision plan are actually moving forward? And so the idea of recalibrating here is kind of going, it's about our activity. And in many meetings, not all, and there's different kinds of meetings, but in many meetings, we want to make sure that we're bringing focus to that activity of our church, of engagement.
Love it. Thanks for a little clarification there. Here's another practice. I know I was kind of getting a little bit ahead of you here, but really putting physical components, things to keep it
Yes.
front and center. You and I both kind of talk to church
Oh,
leaders
yeah.
all the time. Unless it's visible, it's going to be invisible, right? And so making it
That's right.
visible.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a leader on here who has their mission on the wall. I'm thinking of, the foam core 1414 Horizon storylines that sit in meeting rooms, or I've seen dry erase boards with tape on them, with the 1414.
Yeah.
What are some other components of that you see successful?
Brian, I think together we saw the one with the chalkboard where they painted the entire wall, right?
Eastern Hills.
Yeah. And I would come back and say this too, even if you don't want to go into some kind of investment on that, just making sure that you have a digital version that is very clear inside the meeting space. Mm-hmm. I find that if you don't have, you hit it already, if it's not visible, it's invisible. Just by making sure that there is a practice of visually having it there raises the accountability of aligning toward it and being engaged in it, speaking to it, right? Those types of things.
I love it. Let's go to the second key here. Map out the game plan, Jim. Map out the game plan. What do you mean by this?
Yeah, well, my bias here toward, all things sports and all things teams and everything else. Here's the bottom line. Without a structured agenda that sets clear expectations, right, you're going to not have productivity. So the principle is a structured agenda sets clear expectations and maximizes productivity. And I'm all about that idea of effectiveness and maximizing things. And so you've got to sit down and work on the game plan. And I'm going to say that it is, whether you're a second chair leader or whether you're a first chair leader and you have the responsibility of leading meetings, you have to put as much time in structuring the agenda, mapping out the game plan for your meeting as you do in almost anything else, in order to be able to not just see effectiveness, but to maintain credibility. When you're constantly winging meetings, when you're constantly walking into a meeting and you are just kind of hitting rinse and repeat from the last 25 meetings, you begin to lose engagement, all those types of things. So that structured agenda goes a long way. And so I would kind of say three things that's going to help you to kind of think about that a little bit more. First of all, identify the most critical topics to discuss that's going to align with the team's current background, strategies, foreground initiatives. In other words, what are the most critical things that we need to address? And you're always scrubbing that. You're always thinking about keeping that at the top of the list. Like, what do we need to make sure? I'll talk a little bit more about the rhythms of that in one of the other keys, but making sure that you're identifying that, allocating time, the correct amount of time, keeping them focused. Brian, we do a lot of meetings together, both with teams, both internally with Exano, and this whole time thing, right? Allocating enough time. It's sometimes more of an art than it is a science. We kind of treat it like a science, but really is more of an art. And you have to learn the team. You have to know how to cultivate the team. We will sometimes, as a leader, you'll find yourself putting 10 minutes on the time and realizing it just took you, 45 minutes to an hour for something that you had planned on doing for 10 minutes. So being able to stay focused, be on track. I love our collaboration cube, by the way. That will help a lot with keeping a team on time and engaged and those types of things. That's a tool that's just phenomenal and is a part of my everyday use, whether it's in person, online, with the teams I'm coaching, internally, whole nine yards. You know what? And just sometimes just utilize email or team collaboration apps that will help to share supplementary vision information. What happens is a lot of times we back up the dump truck, and we just, as a part of our agenda and stuff, we just put everything they need to know that we want to cover in an hour or 2 hours. And quite frankly, a lot of it just can be communicated to them through Teams or through WorkTango or through some type of other, some type of other app that will help bring that to life.
I think a couple thoughts there, Jim. One is sometimes the finite nature of an agenda, we have to have everything mapped out ahead of time, works against us in church ministry, right? It's not that easy. We're not necessarily that concrete. So if you can have a live document through a Google Doc or something like that, that you can add to and take away from, you don't have to talk about everything that's on it. Jim and I use a lot of Evernote, to kind of coordinate back and forth on that. but then you can add to it, and everyone can go to that document and see those things without having to have it all mapped out ahead of time. And we can maybe even pull something off, but there's also dump links, also all those things, kind of a collector. And at the end of the meeting, then all of a sudden you have this really good comprehensive plan. The idea that I wrote down, Jim, that just popped into my head, I reached over and got my notebook, was what is the story thread of your meeting? Does your meeting have a beginning, middle, and an end?
That's good.
Like, and more than just opening in prayer and closing in prayer and then talking about the stuff in the middle. Like, what is the kind of the story thread of a meeting in that way? And then, Jim, I know, using a template here for meeting agendas, talk about kind of this practice here that you've seen work well.
Yeah, and I want to ping off of what you said as I transition in this practice. Structure doesn't negate fluidity, right? Just because you have structure doesn't mean that you don't have room to move, or your agility is maybe even a better word, right? You can have agility, you can have creativity, you can have the fluid nature of back in and out. You just want to create some space for it. And you also want to make sure that you're being intentional with the time, because that's where we go sideways, is when we lose intention with the time.
It may be an overused illustration, but the idea of the trellis, the agenda, a map out enough where it's a trellis, then the conversation, the spirit at work in us, where those things go, becomes the vine growing on it. But without a good trellis enough to support it, then the vine just creeps along the ground and spreads out. So, it is that maybe idea there.
Absolutely. And so for that reason, I can work with the team a long time. And actually, we've had clients before as well, that they go through a process with us. It's very rich. It's very meaningful. They're executing on it, but they've not integrated the vision clarity process or their identity and direction. They've not integrated it into their regular ongoing meetings, right? And so you notice it says meeting agenda. So I'm not implying that all this goes into one meeting. What I am implying is that you have some type of intentionality between taking our vision frame and integrating it into the meetings to go, hey, this is going to be a priority. Let me give you an example. We could come back and say that there is a series of 6 months where we're going to start every one of our meetings with a Devo or spiritual challenge around our values, one of our values, or our mission or something like that, whatever the season calls for and whatever the intentionality calls for. But then to come back and also, we're going to have this particular meeting. For example, you'll hear me talk about this also in a minute. I'll do a stand-up meeting typically on a Thursday morning. And on that Thursday morning, it's all about taking the strategies and the initiatives from the vision plan and having a quick stand-up meeting around just that one part of the vision frame. The point I'm making here is this: you can't have clarity of identity and direction and have it completely and have meetings that are void of our identity and direction and think that you're going to be able to move the ball forward, that you're going to truly going to be able to create culture, that you're going to truly be able to achieve that vision that you set out in front of you. You can't have them separate. And that's what happens. They get separated, and you don't come up with your own plan of how you're going to incorporate it.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of tend to love the underlying tones of that, but I've never, honestly, and just even doing the work, never thought about that. Like, hey, today's meeting is all about mission, or some of those things in there that I think, I think that can be very helpful. There may be some on the call that are like, what, how would we even start with this? A quick little interlude here. This tool right here can help bring your team to the conversation around clarity. It's a fun tool that kind of talks about, how are we really doing when it comes to clarity? There's a 15 question assessment in there that really deals with those sides of the frame. So if you want to download the PDF of this, you can hit that QR code real quick. Bob's dropping the link in the chat if you miss it, but sometimes, Jim, it's one thing for me as a leader to know we need this, but to bring the whole team around it kind of takes some dialogue. And we created this tool a few years ago as a way to really bring that forward. Let's go to the third key: hold each other accountable. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It sounds like a whole lot of fun. Sounds like a whole lot of responsibility at first, right? So listen, here's the bottom line. When I know I'm accountable for something, and I know that I have to be engaged with it, and I know I have to be prepared with it. I know that I have to bring that when I walk into a room, someone's going to look at me and say, hey, talk to us about how we're doing here. It creates ownership and commitment with me and with each team member, right? So the more we can raise the accountability around our vision clarity in the meetings, the more our team is going to own it, the more our team is going to be committed to it. And so I love just kind of thinking about practices and just kind of this skills, like, so for example, making sure that we are clearly defining the roles and responsibilities for certain agenda items, right? Or tasks. And this even goes far beyond the vision clarity, right? Just giving people roles and responsibilities for what's going to be brought in the team. Now, I'm going to have a bias, and I'm going to say that we're going to have a bias to say, hey, make sure that staff members who are responsible for strategy components, or that you got it clear in one of your meetings, it's about your church's strategy, and you're making sure that each one of those persons who's carrying the banner for strategy is actually engaged, and they're sharing how we're tracking as it relates to our church's strategy. I have a separate meeting for those that are doing background strategies, and when I do those background strategies, it begins with a one-on-one meeting, and they know they're going to be held accountable for that. When we do our Thursday stand-up meeting on initiatives, everybody walking in that meeting knows that they've got to give a report on what's happening within those initiatives. So clearly defining the roles, encouraging open dialogue about the progress that each one of these are going. And Brian, I know you love this because I've seen you do this in practice a lot. The indicator circle, green, yellow, red, or red, yellow, green, yeah. The indicator circles. We use those a lot. And I love once again, fluid. It's got a little bit of subjectivity to it, but you balance with the objectivity, right? And so, I don't think
I've ever had one that's purely one color in the last years. Like mine are all speckled, right. And I see Jen's right. On this call right now. We were just last week did one that had like stripes and horizontal lines, right. And it's so there's some fun. But the point is the conversation that comes behind that, right? The conversation about where we are.
Is what matters. Yeah. It is what matters. You're going to have somebody say that it's green. You're going to have a point leader say it's green, and you're going to have a little bit of a gut check when the entire rest of the room says, I think you're being optimistic with that green. So holding accountability. I don't know if another aspect of accountability here is recognizing, celebrating contributions as visionary achievements. What happens is, we're going to, if we're celebrating something, right, then we're giving positive reinforcement to actions. And that's holding people accountable in a positive way. Now, let's flip that. If we don't celebrate what we see that's happening positive, then we're not really holding them accountable. We're just kind of saying it's okay. And then it's even worse if we see negative actions, right? And we're not correcting those. So I'm really big on calling out, the recognizing and celebrating those contributions, those visionary achievements to foster a positive accountability culture, because then everyone wants to be a part of that.
Yeah. You don't have to repeat over and over. If you make a big deal out of things going well, people drift that way. They tend to gravitate. They want to be celebrated.
Absolutely.
Like your team wants
Absolutely.
To be celebrated, and
Absolutely.
They will partake more of the things that garner celebration versus you having to always calibrate and kind of come back to those other things. So here's a practice, Jim, for holding each other accountable. I think this is probably one of the harder things I've seen in church staff meetings, at least the church staff meetings that when I was on church staff for 12 years, like that ending with commitments, right? Ending with who's doing what. Why is that so hard to put into practice?
I think a lot of it has to do is no one wants to, sometimes cultures have been built to where you're already moving on to the next thing and making a commitment on something that maybe needs to be fixed or maybe needs to be focused on when you've already mentally moved on creates one issue. I think a second issue is sometimes something that is making a commitment, especially an improvement commitment, is going to take some more work. And because of that, we have a tendency to kind of go, well, I don't want to sign up or I don't want to say yes. But you as a leader, you got to make sure. I had a church team, and I love this little phrase. when they would be in their meetings and when they get to this part, they would say, what do we need to work on and what do we need to work off? So they called it work ons, work offs, right? What do we need to work on and what do we need to work off? And what happened is people would sign up and not sign up, but they would identify what leader was working on something and what action needed to be taken to work it off. And as you can imagine, the work off means we got to stop doing this, whether it was a behavior, it could have been an event, it could have been it could have been some type of practice or system that's in place, right? But I totally love that. It's a challenge, and you got to make sure that you've built that in and you kind of hold that as a priority. They were so committed to it. They had their work on, work off guy, and that's kind of what they called him, the work on, work off guy. And in a meeting, that was his role, right? To always make sure that as they were tracking along, and before they moved the next thing, would stop and say, hey, team, let's talk about our work-ons, work-off of that last conversation. And I love that because it raises that accountability.
Was his last name Miyagi?
Right? I knew you were going to go there, especially when I did this. Right?
Yeah. I love that, Jim. I think that's so important because you have those people who are wired, attuned to be thinking in that way already. So giving them even a role in that is really, really good. What a game changer that thought is of just a work on, work off at the end of every meeting. Let's go to number 4. Keep a regular beat. You're so musically inclined. You're so musical that this is not surprising to me that you, in 30 years of knowing you, I've heard, you play every instrument, you sing every song, right?
Right. Well, but you know what? I can effectively clap and tap my foot, and that's probably about it, right?
No.
But what we know from keeping a regular beat or keeping a regular rhythm, right, or having a level of consistency or pattern, is consistency will build trust and encourages team engagement over time. If we begin to understand that something that we say is important today is going to be important 6 months from now, and there's not a whole different thing that's important in our next meeting, then we're going to encourage team engagement. Now, there is a balance here. So don't hear me talking about doing keeping a regular beat and a regular schedule and rhythm to the point to where it becomes mundane. I'm not talking about the mundane. I'm talking about what you're addressing within a meeting. And so I love to sit down and establish a regular schedule of meetings that each have specific responsibilities and specific roles, right? And every one of those are super important for the leaders to kind of think about what's the purpose for this meeting. Is it information, right? Is it inspiration, right? Is there a certain level of report back on this that we need for accountability? And so all meetings are not created equal. And I know I'm preaching to the choir on that here, but have you really ever sat down and said, this is the purpose of this meeting, and we're going to keep everything that is happening in this meeting to fulfill this purpose? So I love setting up regular rhythms. You kind of heard me mention these. The next 2 to 3, consider holding brief check-ins in addition to longer meetings to maintain communication. So if we have an all-staff meeting, I don't want to bog it down even more with some quick check-ins that I need to do. So the teams that I lead, both my team as well as other teams that I get to coach on a weekly basis, challenge them to have their regular all-staff meetings, but then to have these, smaller meetings. One of them is, you'll see that kind of on the third one there, is just kind of a smaller a meeting that gives attention to each part of it. And so you'll see some examples here. And Brian, I think we talked a little bit about a couple of these practices that we do and we do with our churches.
Yeah, Jim, I know this one's yours, that 15-minute weekly stand-up meeting.
We
already talked about the color circle progress, some of those things. One of the things I love, and I know Brad's on the call here live with us and others who are watching who work alongside me, I love clearing out an hour or two on Thursday afternoons every week. Like there's a standing block that's blocked, that if in the earlier weeks we're in a staff meeting, we're in our regular meeting, and there's something we need to get into deeply, we have a time to go to that, to invite the right persons to be a part of it, to do the preparation required to that, so that it can be a predictable meeting rather than just running a rabbit trail. I know none of the leaders watching right now ever run rabbit trails for 30 minutes that only two people are talking in the meeting and everybody else is like, this has nothing to do with us, right? So those rabbit trails, there's a rabbit trail home on Thursday afternoons. And if you don't use it, then that's great. Everybody has 2 hours of their life back that they don't have to worry about. But when we can consistently schedule something early in the week and late in the week, and the late in the week is the flex that we can get to those things, I think that regular beat, you'll find much more productivity that comes out of that, Jim. So that's my practice there.
Absolutely.
That I love.
Agreed.
Hey, team, everybody who's watching right now that's live, we can get to Q&A here at the end. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on the chat. You guys, either we're being super comprehensive or there's not really other questions that are popping up. So jump in the chat there, ask some questions here. Will, of course, if you're watching this on a replay, we get emails all the time with follow-up questions, some of those things. But if there's something coming up on practicality in doing that, to do this, Jim, is there any other practice on keeping a regular beat? Or are we ready for key number 5?
No, I think we're ready for key 5. Let's do key 5, but give us a little time for Q&A at the end if there is some. If not, we'll close. But making it fun and interactive. I could almost call this the Brian key. If it's not going to be fun and interactive, Brian's out, right? Our meetings, being creative, meeting creativity promotes enthusiasm and engagement, leading to better staff meetings. We've seen Lencioni's Death by Meeting. We've seen a lot of those tools that are out there. I mean, some of those resources out there, and I love every one of them. At the end of the day, we've got to make sure that we've got to make our meetings something that people want to be a part of and drawn to in some way or another. And that can be hard. This goes all the way back to the very beginning, is that, we're very passionate about this. Brian, I remember a meeting we had, and we're a virtual team, where we shipped a hat. We bought every person on the team a hat. I know this is not necessarily practical in some environments, but you can make it practical. And that hat, we believe, reflected the personality of that person that they brought to our team. And so whether that was the what's that wisdom hat? I'm trying to,
the wizard hat, the
wizard hat, right? The Joker hat, or the sage hat, and the one where the person's just absolutely cool, the fun hat. There's so many different things, but just doing some things to tie it back to clarity. Have meetings where every meeting they come, when they were unpacking their values, they brought a different different little object, and they gave it to every person. And that object was a visual reminder of their values. So one of their values was the idea of service, serving each other. And they brought golf towels, like the little golf towels that you travel with to clean your golf clubs off. It's just that idea of kind of a towel and being a servant leader type of a thing. And they did that in every one of them. So I love the creativity, right? Asking quizzes, doing polls and quizzes to get different ideas and participation and feedback, having them engage in it, right? Varying the format. We've already talked about that. Bringing in special guests around certain topics that you're doing. I'm huge, probably my biggest takeaway for meetings. I don't know why leaders lead in a vacuum when it comes to meetings. And I'm probably specifically talking to XPs, and I think they're the only ones that are going to run an entire agenda. But I'm pretty big at saying, hey, have shared leadership within your meetings. Don't let it all rise. Number one, your people need to hear from each other. They need to hear from other people. But don't carry the whole thing. It makes the meeting just feel long and laborious when one person is the only person who's walking through a meeting. So shared leadership helps bring that creativity and promotes enthusiasm as we go.
Jim, we had a meeting Monday. You and I were talking yesterday, kind of debriefing the meeting, our internal Oxana team meeting Monday, and we did that. We did just that. We were talking about a specific topic, We had two
Yep.
outside people coming in to do that, and
Yep.
they brought different
Yep.
perspectives, and it made it incredibly
Oh, yeah.
valuable. And you don't have to do that
Yeah.
every week. I'm not saying somebody new,
Right.
but even just pastors, ministry leaders, if you're going to lunch with a key leader, with a key team leader, and they're telling you a story, this thing right here, say, hey, do you mind real quick if I record this and show this to our staff team next time we get together? Hit record,
Yeah.
and just let them tell the story. You can bring someone to a meeting without somebody having to take it out of their day. So I think there's those
And
pieces of it that we need to learn to incorporate better, because it adds value to the overall experience.
And Brian, that is so easy. There's hundreds of those examples under our nose in our churches. When's the last time ministry leaders have done that? And I mean, let's just be honest. It's an afterthought, not a first thought, right?
Yeah.
And so that is such a perfect example of adding that creativity and engagement.
Yeah, I think as a senior leader, especially if someone is telling you a story about something one of your team members did that went well, to record, not just hear it and go, oh, thanks, that's really great, but to record that, to bring that back and go, guys, I heard a great story. Play that. Guess what every other person on your team is going to be looking for? Hey, how do we do it? And especially when it's an alignment with our mission, our values, our strategy, our outcomes. You hear an outcome that's happening in someone's life, someone's growing in their devotional time, and we know that's a big faith. If I use an example from someone on the call right now, like, that's a big faith story. Let's celebrate a big faith story with our staff, because, hey, listen, there's something happening there. Jim, here's a practice at the end of meetings, informal sharing, team wins. What does that look like for you there?
Well, you kind of actually, I would say, even bringing in, that example you gave is an example of an informal, doesn't always have to be super formal, but just sharing around the team wins, celebrating, a little lighter, more fun, personal connection. You go through and you have ministry teams share. Okay, I love this. I have a church that they use the phrase busted, and they'll just pop up a visual of a person, and then they have the word busted, and they were busted, not arrested, not going to prison, but they were busted. They were caught living out one of the values at their church, right? Okay. And just very informally, very fun, even open the door for people to share those types of things. So I love that. I love that aspect. Just make sure that you keep, have that opportunity built in so you're capturing that. We usually complain about not having enough stories. It's because we don't take any time to capture the stories.
Yeah. What about a story time? Like, hey, listen, it's story time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's a standing time on the agenda. Or maybe that's that end
100%.
of the week. Hey, what's our story? I mean, how many people need that story going into the weekend, or some of those things? So I think that's a good cultivating that fun, interactive piece of that. Jim, you're coming back to this idea here, this Proverbs 15:22 at the end of this.
Yeah.
Why is this so critical for you?
Well, I love Proverbs 15. It's just this, one after another practical little insights, right? And just, plans fail when there's no counsel. We've not come together, right? But with many advisors, they succeed. And I guess the reinforcement for me on this one is, don't necessarily go at it alone. Get people around you. Get into a collaborative environment where you're planning out your meetings. You're making sure they're effective. I mean, spend a half a day plan. I saw a question on pop up on providing a sample agenda. I can share. We'll share a sample agenda. We'll do that. But to me, it's all about building that agenda, like sitting there doing the heavy work and the heavy lifting of what does our church need? What does our team need? And, we need a Devo every week, devotion. We need to have a celebration around mission or values. We need to have our dedicated time where we're talking about our strategy and we're looking at the input results of our strategy, but we're going to have some outcome impact results of our strategy, what's happening, right? Dedicating, which meetings are set for background strategies and foreground initiatives. So each church is going to do that. At the end of the day, lead with purpose. Shared this from the beginning. Lead with purpose, meet with vision, and make every moment count. Lead with purpose, meet with vision, make every moment count.
I was going to say, lead with purpose. I was repeating that. meet with vision and make
Yep.
every moment count. Okay,
That's right.
that's probably a pretty good thing to paint on a little sign above your office desk, Jim.
Okay, let's do
If
that.
you want,
Let's do that.
want that. Not
it would have to travel. It has to travel with me because I think my office is in a different city every day. So
yeah, same. Hey, team, I'm excited. We're going to transition here to some Q&A in a second, but we're going to continue this conversation with Greg Gibbs next month. Greg is our generosity guru, our director of development, whatever you want to put the term in there. But a lot of times it's stretching that rubber band the right amount where you're not breaking it, but you're not, getting too far ahead where it snaps and hurts somebody. But how do we budget for staffing ahead of growth? And many of you are in that season right now, probably a little too late for some. But how do we really think about, how our budget really impacts staffing and how vision really drives that conversation? Jim, most of what we've talked about here, especially in the vision planning piece of it, happens in a vision planning process. That is developing that horizon storyline. You talked about strategies and initiatives, pretty key there. I think this is kind of the crux of it for churches. I know I see a leader who is on here that that we're about to go through this process. We've been through it with some. So why is this the important part of it? Like for you, as far as leading that? I mean, I guess it's an obvious question. But...
Well, no, but it's about prioritization, Brian. Both during the recession and then post-COVID, we had churches coming to us, and they were wanting to know about how to downsize their church. They were finding themselves losing money, losing people, all that type of thing going on, but in both the recession as well as in COVID. And we pushed them toward a vision planning process that would allow them to have intentionality around what they were doing to grow and to reach, to be more effective as a church, but also to address some of these issues. So I'm excited about obviously what we talked about today, but I'm also super excited about what Greg's going to talk about, because we're also starting to be in a season of what I would term as upsizing, right? We're need to upsize staff. And so when I look at a vision planning retreat, Brian, I'm still getting about 70, or not Exxon, we're still getting 60 to 70% of our vision planning requests are paired with staff. It's paired with staff organization. It's paired with how do we rethink our staff? How do we reorg our staff? How do we reprioritize our staff? How do we upsize our staff? And so they're like, hey, we want a vision for the future, but we also want to know how this interrelates with our staff. Text came in yesterday, straight up. Hey, listen, we need to look at, recalibrating, reorganizing our staff around our vision. When can we have somebody out there to help us think through that? So the vision planning process married with, what this season, thank you, Brian, for leading this season for us on kind of a staffing focus for 3 to 4 months, because it's the hot button that we're hearing within churches on a regular basis.
Staff organization, staff leadership. It's staff organization, staff leadership, and then funding staff. So those are really kind of the three pillars as we look at that. Hey, we had a question come up. You mentioned it, sample agenda. We're gonna send out a follow-up email. We can attach something to that as a sample agenda. We know some of those things. I think for me, the big takeaway in that agenda thing is the thread. What's the beginning, middle, and end? What is a strong beginning? What's a middle that gets the meat of what we think about, just a good storytelling movie? And then what's the ending? What's the conclusion? What draws us all together? Building agendas off of that. Another question popped up earlier. Who leads the meeting? Jim, does senior pastor or senior leader always have to be the leader of these meetings if we have vision clarity? Is that just kind of an assumption, or what does that look like sometimes?
Yeah, I would say the person who has the gifting of leading a meeting like this is the one who should lead the meeting. And you know what?
Regardless of title.
Regardless. It's not always first and second chair. I've had communications directors who are responsible for leading a meeting, obviously executive or administrative pastors who are leading the meeting. And who's putting the agenda together doesn't necessarily mean that they're the one leading it as well, right? So this comes back to just kind of looking at the giftedness within the church. Your pastor really may be very hands-on, They love that. They don't have time to prepare the meeting and have it ready. And what you're doing, somebody on the team is teeing them up to walk in and being able to facilitate the meeting, even though they didn't have to prepare it. Of course, they'll need to be dialed in as to the priorities and what needs to be done there. I would say in general, and I do mean this, the person who's most gifted to lead the meeting is the person who should be leading the meeting.
I think that's a breakthrough idea, that the person leading does not necessarily have to be the same as a person preparing. They have to be on the same page, but like I'm thinking right now of an incredibly gifted pastor who can lead a meeting with, but the preparation piece cripples them. And so to have an admin, an incredibly gifted admin who can structure, hey, here's what we need to look like, or even an AI assistant admin who can kind of do this, and then bring that leader on to say, hey, here's what we need to talk about. Here's these things. Like that to me is a breakthrough idea there. Is a big piece of it. Before I get to another question that we had ahead of time, here's a question from Brian. How do you coach a staff member who seems to be bucking against the vision and going their own way? I'll say this, that's a hard but healthy conversation, and there may be a point in Jim, we know we hate to get to those things, but we may get to the point of, hey, listen, this vision, if developed collaboratively within the team, the way we do it with churches, if there's a tension point with the vision, it's not a tension point with you as a leader, it's a tension point with a calling maybe. And so this may be facilitating a conversation of, hey, why don't you spend the next 2 or 3 months finding the place where what you see can come to life and fruition, because there's a group of people that have committed to something bigger here. Now, sometimes it's immaturity, and sometimes it's just, you just have to bring someone along. I could go through about 10 different examples. Jim, what comes to mind to you as you read this question?
Yeah, I know. What comes to me is exactly what you're saying here. 60 to 80% of our processes that we're going in the vision clarity process will probably result in someone on that team leaving the staff either during process or very soon after process, because they realize they're not a culture fit or they don't align with the direction of the church. Now, that's not intentionally meant to be there to weed out or sift out or whatever staff, but that's what happens because clarity becomes polarizing. So the question, though, is how do you coach a staff member who seems to be bucking against the vision? That is one-on-one. You got to know their love language. You got to kind of talk to them about, listen, this is a culture. You just hit it. Is it a culture fit? I mean, if they're going to always buck against it, then it's not a culture fit, and you're going to need to, you're going to need to pray them out, guide them out, or take them out, whichever one you decide is whichever one works. If it's not a culture fit, right? At the end of the day, I don't know that it's usually a problem of being a culture fit. They just don't have ownership or buy-in to it. So creating experiences for them to, to be able to like give that person the responsibility of bringing a devotion around the mission statement at the next staff meeting. I guarantee you they will have a new affinity toward that mission when they have finished a devotion around that they got to bring to their peers for 15 or 20 minutes. Give them the responsibility to take something and be able to share what they like best about it, or how they will model it, or how they will demonstrate it, and it changes their perspective, because now they have a personal relationship with it, a personal interaction with it. So I would say, how do you coach a staff member? Help them personalize it. If they've not personalized it, they're probably always going to buck it.
The bigger thing to keep in mind is that those kind of vision fissures, and I don't want to say cracks, but fissures, don't take care of themselves. You're either going to have to lean in, pastor, and do a process of welding, which actually helps make that connection stronger than it was to begin with. Or you're going to have to lean in and help them see, because listen, if it's a culture issue, it's going to be a culture issue, right? If it's an issue of their heart, their repentance, their obedience, if there's a character thing there, then that's not going to go away. Right. And so, and we're not saying they need to go away. We're saying, hey, listen, we have to. And the process through the Holy Spirit's work in their life, that welding, that heat, that intensity can make that joint or make that place of the staff stronger than it ever was. But that's not going to happen on its own. That doesn't happen without that piece of it there. So it's a great question there. I love that. Last question that's on here: How do we stay out of getting in a rut? In practicing this, how do we even keep from getting ruts? And so getting kind of used to that, I think that's the challenge for all of us.
I'll give one little thing. I love to do a retreat every year, and the retreat is about a half-day retreat on what we're going to do different with our meetings the next year. And so to be able to just kind of stop and say, okay, you need some regularity. You've already kind of heard me say that throughout the process, throughout today's webinar. But on the flip side, you need the fun, the creativity, and just the agility as well. So I like to kind of build everything off of a ministry year calendar, and somewhere in July or August, have almost a rethink. You might have a theme for the year, an internal kind of theme for the year, or something that you're going to do. Come in and be able to say, hey, here's what we're going to do different for our meetings next year. And so schedule a quote unquote a retreat where you rethink your meetings for the next year, and then you run that pattern for a year and then do it again. And so you've got to run the pattern to create consistency, or you're going to have frustration, right? But on the flip side, you don't have to run that pattern from now till Jesus comes back, right? Just
and I think
it and just build in time for that.
Contextualizing that retreat, it doesn't mean we all have to go camp and get around a campfire or some of those things.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Rent a cabin or some of those things.
Yeah,
no, I think it's great. A retreat, just in the nature of it, a retreat is a movement away from the pressures that we're facing.
That's right.
And so just even carving out a half day to sit in the conference room and everybody leave their phones in their office, some of those things, like it doesn't have to be, marshmallows and s'mores or something like that.
And the half day in the office is what I meant.
But I think it can be fun. I think it can be more than that. I think you guys could go play putt-putt afterwards or go do something. I do think there needs to be some of that engagement with that, but it doesn't have to be, those things. Hey, Jim, thanks for leaning into this conversation on behalf of our folks that are watching live and those things. I think these are some incredible, important leadership tools for people to use. Once again, we're going to send this via email, but if you want to jump in and grab the Vision Headwaters tool right now for your team, I love this series. I think it's incredibly important, and I appreciate you bringing some great content today for our leaders. It's been great.
Brian, team, lead with purpose, meet with vision, make every moment count in your meeting.